Welcome to the Den. How are you?
Hi, Pauline. I'm very well, thank you. Thank you very much. Yeah, it's great to be with you.
Thank you so much. And thank you very much for taking the time to talk to me today. So I think it would be only fair to start with asking you to tell everyone a little bit about your story, the past and the present, and what do you do now?
Wonderful. Thank you very much. Yeah, well, I'll certainly do that. I've spent my entire working career, which is now quite extensive, sadly, 25, 30 years in agencies, in marketing agencies. So I started off many years ago after university as an account handler in an agency, which I loved, and then subsequently moved to an agency, another agency, which I bought. Actually, I did a management buyout. I bought an agency I worked for with two other partners. So we ran that business there was two of us. Eventually, we bought the third partner out, but we ran that business together as two people for 15 years or more. It was based here in the UK, where I'm based, in the north of England primarily, but with a London office. And it was quite a sizable business. We got up to 175 people, 12 million turnover. Retail marketing was our sort of bag. So we were a design agency originally, but we sort of had a more integrated marketing offer eventually for retailers. So ran that business for 15 years. Eventually decided that I wanted a change and do something different. So this was around 2017. So my partner bought me out. So I exited the business. He wanted to carry on. I wanted something different, and I thought at that stage, that's nearly 9 years ago now. That's flown. That I would do something completely different. I wouldn't be working in agencies anymore. I would have a bit of some time off and then do something completely different. But here I am, 2026, still talking every day about agencies, which is a good thing, because I found after I'd sort of left my business that what actually happened was founders that are new or knew of me started to contact me and ask me about problems or things they were dealing with that I sort of recognised, and I realised that I enjoyed still talking about solving those problems or looking into those opportunities in running agencies, and found that, like me, they found in me somebody that I appreciated, that someone that had sort of been there and done it and would help them and talk to them with a bit of sort of straight talking without trying to sell them a course or anything. And I really enjoyed it. So I've been advising agencies for the last 8 years, and in a consultant, as an advisor, as a non-exec director, whatever label you want to attach to it. I'm not particularly worried about, but I help agencies grow and solve some of the problems and ultimately grow, maybe to exit, or if that's what their objective is, or maybe just grow to provide a more sustainable business and a bigger business, and something that they can continue to operate as a lifestyle agency. I'm not one for saying that exits are the only route. They are for many, but not for everybody. But as long as growth is involved in terms of business growth and personal growth, that's what I'm interested. So that's what I'm interested in. So that's what I do now. Yeah.
Very nice, very exciting journey. And I would love to ask you to tell me two stories that were the most exciting to you. The first one would be about your experience as the agency owner, like something that kind of completely changed the way you operate, the way you work, something that was very like interesting and unexpected, and the same story from you working with agencies as an advisor. And how different are they?
Yeah. So how I changed how I work when I bought my agency. So I was one of the senior account people. We bought the agency from the founder, of course, and it was quite a family orientated business. The husband and wife ran the business, and their daughter worked in the business as well. And there was many other people. It was quite a big business even at that stage. So it wasn't all family members, but there was quite a family feel to it, which was lovely, which was great for that time, and was very successful for them. But when we bought the business, the three of us had worked there for a while, but we weren't family and we weren't connected together. We were sort of three guys, as it happened to be, and people that worked in the business. So we couldn't run it in the same way with the same culture. We had to develop that culture and change it, really, not because it was bad, just because it wasn't a culture that we could follow, because we weren't family, we weren't that sort of that we didn't have that approach, and we couldn't have grown it with that approach. I don't think either. That sort of has a bit of a ceiling. So I'm very proud of that. Change that we helped, that we instigated ourselves, and it was quite a delicate operation, and we were very inexperienced at that time to change that sort of way of working and that culture and in the business. And we had to be sensitive to the people that already worked in the business and the previous owners, who for a while were still involved in terms of we owed them some money, so they still had an interest in the business for a time.
Yeah.
So we couldn't change it completely overnight, and wouldn't have wanted to, but we changed it. And as I say, quite inexperienced, three guys, not run a business before, so it was a very delicate operation and could have gone horrendously wrong, frankly. But we managed through, I guess, a mixture of luck and talent. I'll leave other people to decide which balance of that what it was, but we managed to change. So not completely change the business. We kept the good bits that we could keep, but just the way it was managed and run, that business, we had to change it to some degree, because we weren't we needed to grow it, and we weren't family. We didn't operate in that way. So very proud of that. It's very exciting at the time, and very, looking back, still something of pride, and something I'm very proud of. I guess that from a current story, or a current sort of experience of mine working with other agencies, I do see family cultures, if I can call them that, as well, currently, which are never bad, but they're never. I'm not saying that's a bad thing, but it does limit growth if you're very much maybe family culture is the wrong term. If you lead the business with a sort of personality led approach. So the culture of the agencies I work with, businesses in general, I guess, having a personality at the top of the business is great in many ways, but it can also lead everything just to be dependent on one person. And when that person can't be there, or isn't there, or it grows too big for them to manage the business in that sort of personality driven way, many people can't understand that. Many people can't understand that what's happened. I've grown the business to 10, 15 people, and it's me, and everything surrounds me, and I just want to go to 20 or 25, and suddenly lots of things start to fall apart a little bit, and people often can't understand. They don't know what they've done wrong. They haven't done anything wrong, actually. They've just they need to move on to a different way of managing the business. So that can cause. That's what I see. Parallel to what we managed to do quite successfully, but we were, I guess, in our position, given the management buyout, a bit more aware of it than people that have grown, founders that have grown the business and grown it for 5, 6, 7 years, whatever it might be, got up to a certain level, and then need to sort of go on to the next phase. They can't see it often. They can't see what got this. There's a phrase, isn't there? Certainly in the UK, of what got you here doesn't necessarily get you there to the next phase, which is something that I was very aware of.
Interesting. And I would love to follow up on that. What is, like, now that you are working with the founders who are growing their agencies, growing their consulting studios, like, what are the typical patterns that you see them getting right and see them getting wrong as they start to scale from, let's say, 20 or 15 people and try to grow to a bigger organization like 30, 45? What are the typical patterns they get right and wrong around managing their people, managing their team, interacting with them, and all of the related people processes?
Sure. Yeah. There's lots of things. How would I how would I sort of succinctly answer that? I think sort of when you're around about 15 people, let's say currently, which is for an agency, most agencies is beyond maybe £1 million revenue, but there or thereabouts. Generally, not for everybody, but that would be around that mark. I think the agency owner, that is where things start to often not break, but get stretched. So that's where that sort of pivotal point is, the way you can get to sort of 12, 15 people business in this sector currently. With AI and stuff, that might change those numbers, but never let, but the in the future. But currently, you can get to that sort of level really off out of your own sort of skills and expertise in industry, and being ultimately somebody that can be an entrepreneur and somebody that can manage people and recruit people. It's not easy. It's not like follow, just happens. But nevertheless, you can get to that stage. But then when you get around that stage, I think that's when things on the people front start to creak a bit. And I think people often miss what the people often miss at that stage is maybe, the job then is clarity. You would not probably, even in my sort of back past, you were probably in at that stage more than one room or around more than one table in an office. These days, inherently, you will probably not even be around a table or in a room. You'll be either completely or for a large portion of the time remote working.
Yeah.
So the communication and clarity over what is required, what needs to be done, what's good, what's bad, what needs to be, so getting everything, communicating and writing everything down so that clarity is a big role there. When you get up to 30 people, that's still necessary, but you need, certainly approaching 30, most people need a management team. Everybody needs a management team of some sort. You need help. You might be a genius, but you can't spin all the plates together. So you need your sort of first management layer. And that's often a tricky one, because most people promote from within, of course, which for all good reasons, but they promote based on performance rather than they promote great people that are good at their job, not necessarily great managers. So that comes into play. I think as you get bigger than that, 50 people, this is where sort of culture is always important, but culture really sort of starts to explode, if I can use that term, in an agency, or is in danger of exploding, I suppose, really, in a people business, because culture, when you get to 50 people, is influenced not just by the founder, is influenced by many people, by people in the management team, and if they're not aligned, if they don't all have a similar approach and buy into the culture, then sort of little people start to take leads from different people, and the culture becomes very muddled. So I think that's a difficult one. Then, and beyond 100 people, you're running a different business, really. You're not really running an agency, or as the founder, you're not really running the business. You're running, or you should be running, the leadership team, and the different skills are required there to run a business, to do a leadership team, managing and motivating and leading senior leaders in a business that by that time will probably have come from elsewhere. They won't have all grown up with you through your business. They will have come from other places and learned other things and have different points of view, and rightly so. That's a great thing, but it's a lot harder to manage that than people often estimate.
Yeah, I love it. I mean, I have so many follow-up questions. I mostly want to follow up on two topics. One, it's all about like, how do you build this first layer of managers in your company? The reason I want to get your perspective on that is that I heard from someone who inspired me, and who helped me to grow at some point, that the most difficult transition, generally, it's not necessary from leading self to leading others, because you still have like direct control over what you do. But the most challenging transition is from leading others to leading leaders.
Yes.
And because you kind of start acting through a remote control. And I think it looks like you were talking about something similar. So I would love to get a bit more of the flavor on that topic. So what are the successful cases? What are the best practices to make sure you get this first leadership team right as soon as possible.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, no, that's exactly the thought, the sort of point I was making. Really, those transitional periods, from operating in many cases, if you're a founder of an agency, from operating on your own to starting to employ people and managing the people, to then growing and starting to employ or need managers to manage some of the people, the management layer, as you've just said, and managing those managers, to growing even bigger. And those people are maybe the same people, but they're not just managers reporting back to you, or they're leading departments, or maybe even leading businesses within a group, maybe. So the transition. So as a founder, from sort of day one up to day whatever it might be, when you're leading a bigger team, if you manage to do that, then there is a growth. The business has grown, but you need to grow as a leader as well. Grow as a manager and as a leader. That's one of the big things that obviously needs to happen. You can't do one, but the business won't grow. You won't grow the business effectively without growing as a leader. But sometimes the business does grow, and it's not just your growth doesn't keep pace. So, as an example, an agency of 15 people, just to take a hypothetical situation, suddenly wins another big account, a big client with 500,000 pounds worth of revenue overnight, and clearly they need to step up or recruit maybe another few people to manage that new account. And the recruitment is a job in itself, but also suddenly that agency has grown maybe by 20-25%, whatever it is, and the leader needs to grow it almost overnight as well in how they manage it. They can't manage it in the same way because they've got more people, more responsibilities. They need a different way of transitioning into this bigger business, and that's where I think often people don't see that, or if they see it, they don't realise just how important that is, or maybe they do recognise that is required, but they either don't have the skills or the advice or capacity to be able to make that change. Maybe in some cases they don't want to make that change. That's not what they want to do. They enjoy working directly with people in a smaller team. They've won some business over here, which has overnight sort of grown the team, and that's a great thing. They're celebrating that. That's a success. But also maybe it's something really they didn't actually fundamentally want, because they're more comfortable operating a smaller business rather than a bigger business. So many different factors, but the key is to recognise that if you ignore that sort of stuff or don't see it, then you can't do anything about it. And if you do recognise that needs to happen, you can sort of get people to help you with that change, or start to sort of talk to people about how that change is happening and get their feedback and things on what you're doing as a leader, so that you can hopefully grow with the business, as it were.
What are the elements you think agencies should start putting in place as they start growing from 15 to 20, 20 to 30 people, etc.? What are the key kind of patterns or processes or elements that they should start establishing to make sure they can kind of meaningfully scale without, if they want, as you said, without being burned out and burning out their people as well?
Yeah. That's a great question. There's a number of things again, but I think the key one for me is I have this thing about, founders, actually, despite what I've just said, founders don't scale businesses, systems scale businesses, processes scale businesses. So the first thing, or the thing that you fundamentally need as the business starts to grow, and maybe you recognize this and do this over time gradually, because the business grows reasonably gradually, or maybe if it's something happens like an event that happens overnight, like I've just described, you need to really but you need to work in a different way. So you need to work in a much more structured, systemized, process-driven way, if you haven't been doing already. And in agencies, in my experience, in the past, Whether that changes in the future, well, it will to some degree. I think with AI, this will be a positive of AI if people can harness it. You need to work in a more systemized process way, and where an agency in the past might have got to beyond 15 people, with people knowing what they do and what they're doing, but generally sort of being a team that just gets things done and just sort of mucks in and gets work in the business and out of the door, but does it in their own way, and maybe does it in pockets of people doing working slightly differently, but getting to the end result. That has in the past, that can happen, that does happen, that works. But once you get to a certain size and you want to grow, and in particular if you want to grow even bigger, then that falls over. That doesn't work. People get confused. People get burnt out, as you've said. Some people carry the load more than others. There's confusion. There's mistakes. You can get in a real mess. So systems scale, processes scale. So the first thing I would say is get your processes and systems, if they're not clear, mapped out and clear, and making sure everybody is aware of them. And I think particularly in the age of AI, this is really important, because you can't apply automation or AI capabilities to chaos. You need to apply it to data and apply it to processes and systems. So, if it's always been important at this point, I think, in growing businesses, but now it's even more important with that for people, because the people that just continue to try and operate in a sort of, team, collegiate, let's all just gather together and get stuff done like we've always done, that, those days are numbered, I'm afraid. But those processes, systems, getting those in place. We were in my agency career, running an agency, actually, again, and this probably was a bit of luck, or certainly something that the original founder many years ago, I guess, put in place. But we're one of the secrets of our success at that time was processes, systems. We were a creative agency, a design agency, but we were heavily managed via processes and systems, and that really helped us run the business, helped us grow the business. And this is long before, well, certainly AI was in common use as it is today. It's probably not before AI fundamentally, if you look at the history books and all that sort of stuff. But AI is in its current form long before that. But processes and systems was our strength.
Love it. And I want to connect two two thoughts that you shared. So one, in the beginning of the conversation, you said that as the company goes to around 50 people, one of the biggest challenges was culture, because you start having people that are coming from different places and different industries, backgrounds, maybe different roles, etc. And then I love the point on the processes. So I would love to hear from you, what are the things agencies can put in place in order to start protecting this culture as they grow? And what is the difference between an agency or a boutique that does look like a great place to be from the outside, and the one that is actually a very nice place to be at? So how do you build this, and how do you, are there any secret sauce that you can look for when you are trying to assess it from the outside?
Yeah, no, that's a good question. Yeah, so if I'm understanding that right, then there are agencies that well, many businesses are great places to work. Of course, hopefully there are some that aren't, but hopefully that's the minority. And but there are many businesses that promote themselves as being great places to work, aren't there? And win or certainly apply for awards and different schemes and things to get recognition for that. Which I work with agencies that do that. I'm positive about that. We, in my own business, did that ourselves some years ago. Of course, now they may still be doing it. That agency still exists, but we entered regularly the Sunday Times newspaper best companies to work for, and local schemes as well for that reason. But I think what sometimes people miss is that those those schemes and those awards and doing that focuses people's minds on the culture and whether this is a good place to work in the business. So that's not a bad thing, is it? That's having some sort of direction and ambition to win those sort of things is good, because it applies people's minds to doing the things right. And I think also it's a great recruitment tool, of course. So it's a great if you can sort of, if it attracts talent. But I think the thing is, whilst those things often what I see happening is those agencies that look like they're great places to work and maybe even have the odd award here and there, they invest in sort of the optics, really. The agencies that I find that are actually really great places to work, it don't particularly focus on the awards. They focus on doing the things right in the business, and sometimes those things are not the most glamorous tasks. So the glamorous or the visible expression of this sort of stuff is where we see great places to work that are that they're offering lots of perks and incentives for people to work there, and are very good at promoting themselves as in terms of their employer brand, and the fact that they have away days, and the fact that they have gym memberships and free breakfasts and on certain days or all week or whatever it might be. And all that stuff is good, all that stuff, I'm doing me wrong, all that stuff is good, and all that stuff is far more necessary and expected now in today's world than it was in my days of running an agency. I have a son and a daughter who are 22, and my son's 22 and my daughter's 24, and both of them actually work in the agency space. My daughter works in an agency, and that sort of stuff is expected, acknowledged, is seen as a great thing, and it is a great thing. But really, underneath, I think those things attract talent, like I say, but they don't necessarily retain it, because everybody generally does it to a greater or lesser degree. Everybody, it's not unique anymore to give people breakfast or to give people. We used to have in my day. I was in danger of sounding like an old codger, but back in my day, but not that long ago. But we had free fruit, and free massage, free sort of head massages and neck massages in the agency. And at that time, that was quite innovative stuff. Nobody else did that. That was what won awards for us, But now everybody, or most people, do that or something similar or something comparable. So everybody sort of raised the bar, which is great on that sort of stuff. But I think, like I say, that attracts talent in, or sort of makes people choose, your business to come and work for. But it doesn't retain people. People regularly move jobs for either better perks or more money or whatever it might be. But the things that really retain people is the less glamorous stuff, and it's stuff that is the harder yards, really. It's having the structure in place as a business, having a clear hierarchy in the business. Now, I'm not one for having layers and layers of people, layers and layers of roles and different hierarchies. I'm not one for huge hierarchies, but I do see, and something that does frustrate me a lot is people that use the flat structure mantra overly, because I find often many people talk about flat structures and no hierarchies because they're lazy, frankly, because they don't want to confront the hard work of putting a structure in place and having difficult conversations with people about performance. They say, well, we're a flat structure, we're all working in this together, let's all just muck in. But I think people need structure, particularly in a growing business, and even people, Gen Z people working in businesses today, they want to see where they're going, even more so than they did now. They want, well, I'm here, I want to see how I get to there on the ladder, and when I get there on the ladder. So I think people crave structure. I think you've got to have consistent leadership in the business, and this isn't just about people saying, hey, we have gym memberships and let's enter some awards. This is consistent leadership through good and bad times, through difficult and great times, where you get feedback, you get transparent communication about what's happening in the business. You tell people what's expected of them, so they're clear on what they need to do, and you tell people when they get it wrong. You tell people when something isn't quite up to standard, or something, a mistake's happened, and you do it timely in a timely way, and you do it so that you help the individual understand, but also you do it so you help your business improve and make sure you don't make those mistakes again or do that low substandard work again. So there's what I think the biggest thing, if I could sum all this up, is to say is in one of the biggest factors is not the award, is not the Glassdoor reviews or the gym memberships. It's having a culture of what I call a culture of accountability. So you've got people that work in your business that at every level, not all just the senior people, every level know what's expected of them, know what they need to do, and are accountable for it, making sure that it gets done. And they don't need the other people at the higher up to tell them. They know that's my thing. I do that. I always do that. That's I know how to do it. I do it to a good standard, and I don't just walk away from it if it's not completed or whatever. I make sure it's done and handed off to the next person. And that accountability in agencies is one of the big challenges, I think, the big weaknesses in many businesses, that they've just not got that. They've got certain people carrying the bulk of the work and the bulk of the responsibility or accountability, and everybody else these days just sort of coming in and doing a job and then going home.
I mean, again, 300 million topics I would love to follow up on, but I'll need to select the best ones. I like this concept because I think it also kind of allows to build a company where, like, if you have a structure, it allows to have an organization where the operations and the growth is fair. And I think now, with like so many different generations working together at the same time, it really creates a difference, because people start having the voice and they start having very clear accountability based on what they bring and what they produce, rather than I don't know, some cultural background or personal background, etc. So I like this idea. But I want to kind of ask you a little bit about two topics. So you told, I really liked the angle about the Gen Z who is entering the workforce. And I mean, also would love to hear your stories from more personal perspective, like someone growing those individuals. And how does this all live in the AI era? Because I mean, I think when I was entering design, we kind of had the luxury of not choosing right away what kind of designer we wanted to be, where we were heading, etc. Now, with AI being able to produce to quite a good extent, I would say, the job a junior designer or a junior professional would do like 5-7 years ago, like what is the way for them to enter the workforce, and what an agency should think about as they are kind of thinking about this succession of the generation and new talent coming in the game.
Yeah, no, that's a really great topic, a really important one. I wish I had all the answers to that one. I don't think I don't. So, but I'll give you some views, of course, seeing as that's what you're asking me to do. I would say from what you've said there, that Pauline, there's two angles here, isn't there? There's the employer angle, the in my case, and the employee, the potential employee person, the individual, and if it's the junior or younger people, Gen Z, university leavers, or young people entering the market now. And it's I say I've got personal experience of that because I've got people of that age, my son and daughter. I've got personal experience actually. My daughter works in an agency. She's in SEO. She's the eldest. She's 24. But my son actually, which wasn't a plan of either of us, but my son is actually working with me.
Oh, very nice.
So, which is nice, which was never the plan, because Callum's a psychology graduate of last year, and loves psychology, did really well at it, incredibly well at it, got a first in his degree, amazing. But he'd never shown any interest in marketing agencies for 21 years. He'd never shown the slightest bit of interest in it, and he came out of university and he knew he didn't want to be a psychotherapist or a therapist, and that wasn't his area of interest in psychology at all. And he didn't really know what he wanted to do, but he's mad on AI. we decided, well, if you want to use AI and develop a career in AI, I wrote a book a few years ago for agencies, and it's called Stand Out or Die. And there's many themes in it, but one of the themes is focus, is having a target audience. So we said, well, why, if you're going to do AI, Callum, why do we have the target audience? Why don't we focus on agencies? So that's what he's doing. So it's a long-winded way of telling you that I've actually
So
got.
you are about to build a second AI native agency with your son, which is a family business.
A family business, which was never the plan, but that seems to be the direction we're going. But I've got, even though Callum, we get on very well, and I've known obviously he lives with us still, and he's my son. I've experienced working with him as a younger person already in the last 12 months. So I've got personal experience of it. Anyway, coming to your point, from a looking at the individual from one perspective, the young employee, I would agree with you. I think what you just touched upon there. I think to be focused, to be more clear, if you are a young person entering the agency industry or wanting to, or any industry for that matter. But let's take agencies. I think it's, if you can, and people, let's face it, at that age are not often clear. They're not often clear for a long while, if they ever are, about what they want to do. But having a direction, being able to say, that's the sort of, this is the role I want, is more important than it's ever been, because employers, I think, need more focus. They've got to be more focused, and then they're recruiting more strategically than just bringing in graduates or any, actually not just graduates, but bringing in young people en masse. I think there's much less of that going on, and there will be in general going forward. So they'll be wanting certain people for certain roles. So I think having a focus as an employee, as a young person, is one thing. Of course, having AI knowledge is another. Whether you're crazy on it like Callum is, or whether you just you embrace it because you're an AI native. And then as an employer, as an agency employer, I suppose they've got a real dilemma, our agency friends, with this, because people have been and are still the lifeblood of agencies. Of course, they're people businesses. But with AI, that is going to come under threat, and which could be a good thing. I say threat's probably the wrong word. That's going to come under pressure, and that could be a good thing. For some people, because employees are the lifeblood, but they're also a huge cost, of course, to agencies. The biggest cost by far in the past. So that could be an opportunity, and it's also a threat. But when we're talking about young people, the real danger is, I think, agency owners might shut off that lifeblood, that artery of young people, and say, well, we're going to use AI. We're going to have senior people using AI. We don't need juniors. But of course, then the danger is in the coming years, and it might not be that long. It might be, not talking years and years. I'm talking in the next couple of 12 months or whatever it might be. An agency, which I've already started to see in a couple of people I know, has some people and their senior people in their business leave, or for whatever reason, either attracted to other jobs or leave for other reasons, and then there's nobody coming through the ranks at a junior level to replace that person. There's nobody learning, bringing up from the ground up, as there has been. There's not a pipeline of people, if you like, which there has been for a long time. So I suppose what I'm saying is, from an employer perspective, you've still got to invest in young talent, but you've got to do that wisely, of course. I think you've got to spend years ago. I keep using that phrase, years ago. But in the past, the agency model has been bringing a junior person in, putting them in a certain role, and they're trained through experience. They work with other people, more senior people. At some point they start to interact with clients, not right away, but eventually they experience different types of work, design or SEO or whatever it might be, and then maybe they find the particular area that suits them, or they enjoy, or they're very good at. So time trains them, but not really particularly formally, and certainly in small agencies, different in big consultancies and big businesses. But it's the sort of time served. If they're the right people, they manage to sort of absorb a lot of information and become focused and good on what they did, and find their role. And I think in today's world, that's got to be a lot quicker now. I don't think employers can't afford to spend that time. I don't think younger people want to work in that way. Again, personal experience tells me people want to know much quicker, much faster than I ever did at that age. What's my job? What's my role? What's my responsibility? Which are my clients? Because I need clients. I've been here 3 months now, and I need some clients. Whereas in the past, I'd have been going.
Interesting.
So I think people need to be managed in a much different way and brought through in a much different way and trained. But I'm not talking training courses, although they might be relevant. I'm not talking about sending people away on courses. I'm talking about how you intentionally develop people, not just leave them in a role for 6 months, 12 months to get get their heads around it, and then see where they go. Then you've got to really invest, not just financially in recruiting them, but invest in time with them to train them.
And I mean, I think that was one of the last topics I wanted to gather also together, because there are a lot of studies about the fact that in the next 10 years, like so many jobs will be touched by people needing new skills and new capabilities. And I mean, AI is part of it, but then there are other elements as well that are entering in the picture. So from where you stand and from what you are seeing day to day, like how should, let's say, a 30 to 50 people agency think about developing their people, upskilling or reskilling them? Like, what are the critical elements to make sure they help people learn at different levels, different stages? And what is the best way to do it in order to be able to get a 22 years old in the field faster and put them in front of the client and have them act more or less independently so that they don't leave in 6 months because they're unhappy.
That's right. Yeah. No, great question. This is where actually, in my, and this is this is a sad thing to say in many ways, but I don't think agencies really need to step up, because I think they've been very, very poor agencies at this sort of stuff in the past. They're very, in fairness, many agencies are smaller agencies, small businesses, haven't had the resources financially to invest in training, formal training. Really, it's been on the job training. But as I've just described, with technology and new people and the younger generation coming in, that needs to change. It also needs to change. Actually, I was just thinking there as you were speaking, it needs to change. It should have already changed because of remote working as well, of course, because
Yeah.
so many more people are remote working now, and that training by or learning by osmosis, learning by overhearing people in the next desk, or people talking in the kitchen area or whatever, of how they dealt with a client problem or what the issue was. You just, of course, with remote working, you don't get that now as much, and that's a big gap actually, because that was fundamentally how I picked up a lot of my knowledge and managed to sort of get grip on my role in the earlier days, learning from other people and listening to what they were doing. So I think you need to be more intentional about it. How do I think people should do that? Well, I think maybe there's a few things. I suppose there's a real danger with AI in particular, in that the senior people, and actually seniors and juniors for that matter, we use AI to answer our problems or to give us a response, without even really thinking through what the problem is fully. So I'm seeing this increasingly. I was in a meeting last week actually with not a senior person, a person of around my age, a client of mine who owns an agency, and they presented me with a marketing plan or strategy to review, and I've read some of it, and some of it is very good, but it's absolutely all AI generated. And I know that not just because of the sort of tells, or if you like, of M dashes and that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
They're in, but just the whole structure of it. An individual wouldn't have written that report in the way that it's written in that business. You might have. It's almost a McKinsey-esque, dare I say, approach to a report in
Yeah.
a very small agency. So it just wouldn't have had. See, I can say it's been written by AI. And you know what? I understand that, of course, because that we've all done that. We're all doing that, but it screams AI, but that's not my biggest beef with it, really. My biggest beef is with it, really, that they've probably not given that situation a lot of thought behind the scenes. They've
Yeah.
asked a question of an AI LLM chatbot or whatever, and it's given them an answer, and they forwarded it on to me. So particularly for going back to the young people and bringing people through, they've got to be given, rather than just given an answer or told to use AI. I think they've got to be intentionally trained to think about the problem first. And to a degree, I'm doing that with my son. My son sometimes comes in with a hey, we need to do this with one of our clients, so I've got this opportunity. I've asked AI. Claude says this. I'm just going to do that. And it's not necessarily wrong, but sometimes I said to Callum, just before we do that, what is the problem here? What we're trying to solve? And as clever as he is, sometimes he stumbles. What do you mean? What's the problem? What's the fundamental? What's the issues around this problem that we're looking at? Have we covered all bases? Because it's very easy to go to go straight to AI. So I think give people the problem before you give them the answer, certainly, or give them the direction to use AI to give them the answer. I think when you're solving problems as a senior person, take them through they used to say, certainly in British schools, show your workings on maths problems. I don't know if that's
Yeah.
don't just give us
We have the same.
so which is it? So that principle of show people, younger people, how you got to that problem. Don't just say that's the answer or AI says that, so let's do that. No, you've got to train them again to sort of help them to understand your reasoning, so they can understand how they might approach that in that type of problem in the future. I think give them ownership of something early, actually. Maybe with a bit of a safety net if you need one, if it to as a backstop in some way. But younger people, in my opinion, and I'm not just talking about my son here. I'm talking about people I see in other agencies or people who I talk to in other agencies that have got young people, of course, working for them. People want responsibility far more and more quickly now than I ever did at my age. They expect responsibility. They expect to be given something to own. So give them ownership, but maybe don't keep them away from that. Give it to them, but choose the ownership wisely, and maybe give them a backstop or a safety net, or have one in place. And then I think as I've sort of maybe touched upon, but where if AI has generated content or solutions, ask the younger people to not just pass it on to the client as perhaps
Yes.
ask them to critique it and ask them to themselves without AI. Tell me what you'd have what's missing. What's an angle here that the AI has missed or should have explored a bit more? Or maybe what's an angle here that the AI has included, but actually it's not that important in this brief. So it's that critical thinking and building sort of reflection on what we're doing where we can into the business, reflecting on what's doing, not just churning something out and sending it off. Because if that's the case, then we're all just going to be operators of AI, aren't we? We're just going to be the hands on the keyboards or whatever, rather than actually the brains, which is going to be a bad situation for us all.
Yeah. So agree. So much agree with you. So true. Look, I love what you are sharing. I love like the angle and the feeling. So we often talk about protecting the human connection at work. Now that AI is, as you said, like changing the way we operate. Any kind of closing thoughts or advice for everyone included, like agency founders, junior people, on how to protect this human angle so that people grow together and instead of talking to their laptops all the time?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think, and wow, I guess there's quite a few things. I think, two things I'd focus on. As much as the firstly, more practical thing, I guess, is as much as I understand and appreciate the need for and remote working now as a thing, that's remote working is here to stay far more now than it. It's not going away. But I do think I'm rather than completely remote working, unless you're a remote business that just fundamentally geographically you work in different countries and all that sort of thing. Well, that's clearly a different thing. But if you're a business that allows and enables remote working, I still think I'm a hybrid fan, I guess, is what I'm trying to say. I'm a fan of this time in the office with people is still very important, or would be very important to me if I was running an agency. That's not to say 5 days a week, but 3 days in, 2 days out, or the other way around, or whatever. I think that's a balance that is acceptable to many people, hopefully, these days, and people that work in that way. That's something that people can. That's how they would like to work, but also that's much more of a balanced way of doing it for the business. And the benefits of doing that are obvious, but not always apparent every day in, day out, week in, week out. But over time, I think the businesses that work like that will be much stronger culturally than they will if it's just pure remote working. So I think the practical thing, but also I think on the AI angle of that of this question, I think where people are. I think there's too many people looking at AI and starting to use it. So I think they should, as a strategy. I've got this thing where, and Callum sort of helped me develop this sort of thinking where we should stop using AI actually, but not as in stop using it completely, but stop using it as a tool, and start being an AI business. So start being an AI-enabled business. So don't treat these things as tools. That we use and we pick and we just use to do our jobs. Treat them. How can we integrate AI into the workflows and the systems, and the processes? So we are fundamentally using AI, but it's just part of the business operating model. It's not. We're not just using tools individually to do our jobs and to do them a bit quicker and better, and then do some other stuff. We've got to become a more AI-enabled business. And so I think the agencies that have already and will. Generally benefit from AI are the ones that have redesigned their workflows around AI. They've not just bolted some tools onto how they work currently, which goes back to maybe the sort of first part of one of the first points we were talking about. It goes back to having processes, doesn't it, and having systems in place and integrating AI with the systems, not just bolting on tools.
Yes, because this way people will still be able to talk to each other and we'll have time to go grab coffees and brainstorm ideas, and AI can do the boring part.
And your processes are yes, there's the sort of that sort of stuff, but also the processes are ones of we all come together at this point as humans to discuss the output, and then we feed it into AI again, and that sort of. So it's very clear that I see there's certain stages here and gates and different things where the humans are always in control, and humans are always in control, but they also there's always the oversight from humans on the quality and whether this is the work, whatever the work is a good enough standard, or whether it could even be improved.
Well, I don't have any more questions. I mean, I could have much more questions, but I think I should be also mindful of your time. Yeah. Thank you very much for the conversation. I really enjoyed it. And I would love to have you for our second episode, for our second season.
Well, that's very kind. Thank you. No, really, really always enjoy speaking to you, Pauline, and thank you for inviting me on. Hopefully that was useful for your listeners. And yes, we'd love to come back if I'm invited at some point when you've got another season to do. Then we'd be delighted to join you again.
Thank you so much. Talk soon.
Thank you, Pauline. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.